Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're happy to invite you to our Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month webinar, which the theme this year is Advancing Leaders Through Opportunity. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Kathy Kim, to share some welcome remarks.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you everyone for sharing your afternoon with us. My name is Kathy Kim. I'm the Director of Capital at Inclusiv, and it is such an honor to be able to share time with you, as well as the founding members of HAPICUP, the Hawaiian Asian Pacific Islander Credit Union Professionals Group. I have had the pleasure of working with credit unions for more than 15 years now, and to see the formal formation of a leadership circle that seeks to amplify solidarity and inclusion and belonging across the credit union space, but also to specifically spotlight the voices and experiences of Hawaiians, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders within this space is just such a personal privilege and joy that we could expand our community and the sense of belonging within the credit union space and financial inclusion movement. As Monica shared, and as you all know, we are celebrating Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Month, which was created back in 1992 under the Bush administration, but the history of this diaspora and these rich communities extend far beyond that time and date to even the 1500s, when the first Filipino settlement was founded in California. And within the credit union space, the role of Asian Americans in expanding and providing financial services to communities of modest means dates back to even the 1800s, when you look at the roots of the Lee Federal Credit Union, which was founded to serve members of Chinatown, and extends beyond today to the founding of Everest Federal Credit Union, which was organized during the pandemic to serve the Nepalese diaspora across the country. In addition to Asian American and Hawaiian and Pacific Islander credit unions and MDIs, folks that identify with these groups are also present in your credit unions, as well as in the communities that we serve. And it is our distinct pleasure and honor to announce and hold the first ever joint session with HAPICUP. And so on that note, I'm going to pass the mic over to Jennifer Esperanza, who is going to continue with some opening remarks and some level setting for today's conversation. Jennifer?
Great. Thanks, Kathy. Thanks so much. Welcome, everybody. So I'm Jennifer Esperanza. I'm Senior Director of Organizational Culture and Strategy at Coopera Consulting. So we're not a credit union, but we are a consulting firm for credit unions. I wanted to do some table setting before we go into a larger discussion between the founding members and Inclusiv on the state of AAPIs in the credit union industry. It's important to know and get a sense of what the lay of the land is. And so I wanted to share some facts with you. We are a large demographic. According to the US Census, there are close to about 20 million AAPIs in the United States. More than 26 different nations are presented in this demographic. So you can see how sizable that is, because it encompasses a lot of ethnic groups, languages, dialects, religions, other important crucial markers of our social identity. What I like to say to folks is that the idea of being an Asian Pacific Islander doesn't actually take hold or actually really mean very much until you're actually in the United States, right? When you're in Asia, where you're in the Pacific Islands, you're the majority, right? You don't go around, saying and declaring that you are AAPI. It's only here where that demographic category has been imposed on us that, that becomes our reality when we get here, or when, we find ourselves being labeled that way. And so we also have to think about the nuances, right? So differing immigration paths and history can help explain, especially in our industry, help explain the economic realities and those disparities for our various communities. If I can get the next slide. So when it comes to immigration paths, it's really important to think about our context, whether you are born abroad as an AAPI or, here in the US or somewhere else. It really helps to understand the various context that brought us or our ancestors here, right? Thinking about the context of, when you arrived. Were you someone who arrived before or after 1965? It's important to understand 1965 because that was when the Hart-Celler Immigration Act took hold, in which there was an overhauling of the entire U.S. immigration system. And so the previous quotas in which certain groups only came in certain numbers, right? And especially for Asians, access to coming to the United States was much more limited prior to 1965, especially with the Chinese Exclusion Act. In 1965, those were done away with, especially for immigrants who came in as highly skilled laborers. If you could prove that you had a college degree or you're on your way to getting a college degree, this allowed you to come to the United States. Or if you were being reunified with a family member who was already in the United States and had the ability to, petition you over, that also has an impact. So that tells you about the circumstances under which the U.S. government, right, has brought you or your family to the United States. How long have you been here? How many generations has your family been here? That gives us a sense of acculturation levels and the length of time that families or individuals have been here. Did you come in as an immigrant in which you applied to come to the United States, or were you a refugee in which, yes, there was an application process, but you were basically fleeing your home country, seeking political asylum, oftentimes without a lot of planning. And so, you are fleeing for your life. And those are differences, right? Because immigrants tend to go through a different process. They have different, financial resources, as do refugees or lack thereof. We're talking about family reunification or high skilled visas, even things like, are you coming from a former US or British colony? That gives you a sense of your exposure to the English language and the likelihood by which you're able to obtain jobs that give you that kind of upward economic mobility and citizenship status at a quicker time than others who have to learn a whole new language and culture. And then finally, for Pacific Islanders, are you coming from a Pacific Island territory, such as Chuuk, Marshall Islands, Guam, in which there's a visa waiver program because the U.S. military has bases in those islands, and it allows for folks to come to the mainland U.S. Without the need for these kinds of immigration applications or seeking asylum. You have the right to travel and work. If I can get the next slide. And so those immigration paths, do tell us the story. And it tells us about things like access to jobs, your eligibility for particular job opportunities, right? And so just looking at this, right, for thinking about the average hourly wages for full-time year-round workers, you can see there, right, there's the AAPI average, and then there's the US average. The data on migration gives us better context for understanding those financial realities. We can't all assume everyone falls into the model minority category, that they, tend to, make very good incomes or some stability, that they're college educated. No, right? All those previous questions in the previous slide have to factor in. And we also find that, for those who are below the national average, think about their circumstances, especially for Pacific Islanders, and especially those who came as refugees. They have fewer economic and social resources to be able to have that stability early on, compared to, let's say, those of Indian, Chinese, Pakistani, or Japanese descent who might have come on a work visa or so forth. And then next slide. And so taking a look at more information about low-income AAPIs, that data is available through the Center for Economic Policy and Research, where they took a look at, again, also where you can see those disparities between these different groups. It's really important to think about our contexts of how we arrived, how long we've been here, and so forth. And then finally, the map. The last slide there, by state, we can see low-income AAPIs can be found in all states, but some have larger shares of low-income AAPIs. In Nebraska, West Virginia, Mississippi especially, you've got about a quarter, 25% of AAPI households that are low income. So that's pretty significant. And we want to be able to understand the story of why. One hypothesis, right, is that these are states that have taken in refugee groups, those who don't come in with those kinds of resources or capital to be able to move to the middle class very quickly and easily. At lower levels, you've got, in New Jersey, Virginia, and Maryland, where you have more of middle class, educated folks of AAPI descent who are settled in these areas. So that data is also available through the Center for Economic Policy and Research. But yeah, that's me in the table setting, and I just wanted to open it up for the rest of my colleagues so we can have a discussion about why this stuff matters.
Thank you, Jen. And in case the questions are coming in about will the slides be available, we will send the slides that you've shared with the, so people can take a closer look and examine the information and the map after the session. We'll send the recording and the slides as a PDF. But I'm gonna go ahead and kick us off with our panel discussion, but I just have to make one announcement. So we want to thank the Illinois Credit Union League's DEI committee, Commit to Change, for providing a $50 gift card. They were able to provide a gift card last year to one of our listeners for AAPI Heritage Month, and so we just thank them for coming back and offering this their generosity a second year. So one of the listeners today who's on the call will get drawn, and then we'll contact you for a mailing address so that we can send you the gift card. So I am going to kick us off with a conversation with the founders of HAPICUP, which is the Hawaiian, Asian, Pacific Islander Credit Union Professionals Group. We're going to be joined today, Jennifer, who kicked us off earlier, as well as Megan Green, Hazel May Overturf, Ivory Lloyd, and Mark Bowles. But I will just say at the top of the conversation, there are these affinity groups that exist already in the credit union space, such as the African American Credit Union Coalition, and so some of you may know AACUC, but there's also NALCUPs, the National Latino Association for Credit Unions and Professionals, and then CU Pride. And so there are groups that it's made up of people in the credit union industry based on their identity. And so we were excited to see that HAPICUP now exists, and we wanted you to hear more about it directly from the founders. And that's what this conversation is all about. But I am going to kick us off with some questions, and then we'll definitely open up the floor for questions. So as you're hearing what the speakers are saying, and if you want to have any direct questions, you're welcome to use the chat or the Q&A box at any time, and then we'll try to save those for the end with the back and forth with the folks listening. So I'm going to minimize, I'm going to stop sharing, but I'll kick off the first question to our HAPICUP founders, and then we can take it one at a time. But the first question is, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your time in the credit union industry. So Hazel May, you want to kick us off?
And sure, we'll absolutely. Thanks, Monica. Happy Asian American Pacific Islander Native Hawaiian Heritage Month, everyone. So my name is Hazel May Overturf, and I'm currently a program director at Kauai Federal Credit Union. And I have been in the industry for 13 years. And I actually started my career at an organization in a credit union in the Pacific Northwest. My background, I guess, is I think helpful to paint the picture here. And I love that Jen brought us in with some of this data, but I am a second generation Filipino American, very proud of that. That means my parents had immigrated to the US by way, and it's funny that you mentioned this, through Guam, and ended up being here in the 1970s and has established a life here in the US, trying to assimilate and navigate the changes in what they've experienced in their home country to now. And funny story, my dad actually retired and moved back to the Philippines because of that pull from his homeland and things of that nature, which is helpful for me because it's brought a lot of that culture and a lot of the things that have been kind of impacted throughout my life here in the US, having both feet in both America and the Philippines. Forward. So just really excited to be here with all of you. Yeah, I'll go ahead and pass it on to one of my other co-founders, Mark. Can I throw it to you? Does that work, Monica?
Thanks, Hazel May. So I'm Mark Boltz. I now work for CU Strategic Planning. I was at Corporate Center credit union before that. And then before that, I was a commercial lender at a natural person credit union in Southeast Wisconsin. I've been in the credit union industry for about 7 years. I am a recovering banker, so I've been in the financial services industry for what I thought was a little less time, but it's already been 12 years. So it's been a while. But I am adopted from the Philippines. So I think that makes me a first generation person, which still kind of, I'm sorry, this kind of like brought light to me in just a few minutes ago. It's like, so I'm still kind of like trying to learn more about the Filipino culture and everything. And then learning about them, I'd hate to say, has given me a little bit of insights of my quirkiness and the person that I am. So I do believe that is inept in me, and it won't be changing anytime soon. So I will hand it over to Megan.
Thanks, Mark. So I'm Megan Karaman Green. I am first generation Filipino. I grew up in the Maryland, DC area. And I did spend some college years working for banks. And then post-college, I did work for Pentagon Federal Credit Union for a little bit of time before I moved to California. And there I spent about 10 years working in consumer products. In 2019, I moved to Michigan, and I was really looking for an organization to work with that was more impactful for our community. And so I find myself back at a credit union, Lake Trust Credit Union in Brighton, Michigan. So shout out to my Lake Trust team members that are here. I see a few of you in the audience. So, you know, again, a big reason for me wanting and being really passionate about this credit union space is because I wanted to find a job where I could use my skills and my experience, but also make an impact on the community. And I'm happy to say that Lake Trust really does focus, as well as all credit unions, focus on empowering our members and aligning their goals and their financial well-being with the products and services that we offer. And so it's really fulfilling being part of this movement. And then specifically, I was part of the Filing Crashers team in 2021, and that's when I met a few other API credit union professionals, and especially during this time where we were seeing some really devastating news, not just economic, but you know, just some of the anti-API hate crimes against our community. It was really important for me to find other AAPI community members, both within my professional environment and, you know, my community. And that's when I started connecting regularly with some of the team members that you see here. And that was helpful for me to navigate. So really aligning what I do professionally with some of my life goals has been important, not just through the credit union space, but through this group of HAPICUP. And I will kick it over to Ivory.
Thanks, Megan. Hello, everyone. My name is Ivory Lloyd. I'm with Hawaii Federal Credit Union as a social innovation and small business program manager. And, you know, my background, I was actually born in Samoa and raised in Hawaii. I would say I'm very blessed to be in both places of those. But one of the most important things, I was so excited. I'm just excited about this webinar and then the spaces that you guys are all creating, the people that I've connected with, because I think growing up here in Hawaii, like we're surrounded by minorities. I'm surrounded by AAPI, like it's really prevalent. So I would say I'm blessed in that sense. However, when I started working at the credit union, I started working as a teller. And that was like, you know, the immediate position that was available to me. And I kind of worked my way up. And what I don't necessarily see a lot of like Polynesian, Asian American in leadership positions. So what I'm really excited about is like really lifting up creating those pathways to get into leadership positions, and like just creating this like really amazing group that we can support each other and like share our stories and our successes, failures, and just like connect with each other. So thank you guys for providing us this space today.
Great. Jen, do you want to share a little bit more about your background, or
Sure.
how
Yeah.
you got into credit union?
Sure. Yeah. So again, I'm Jen. I am Filipino American. I was born and raised in the United States, grew up in San Francisco Bay Area. My parents immigrated in the late 60s, early 70s at separate times. And like a lot of immigrants, they each had multiple jobs, so I hardly saw them. And so I was raised mostly by my grandma, who was undocumented, didn't have any formal education. And so my first language was Tagalog. And I didn't learn English until kindergarten. And I spent a lot of my childhood doing translating for my grandma. My family are pretty much lifelong credit union members. We were members of Patelco, Pacific Telephone Company Credit Union. My mom was an employee for the phone company. And yeah, I actually came into the credit union industry fairly recently. I am trained as an anthropologist, a cultural anthropologist. I did research and writing about cooperatives in Southeast Asia. So I lived in the Philippines and Indonesia for a number of years to understand how cooperatives uplift local communities. And so, yeah, I was kind of in the co-op space until about 17 years of doing all this. During the pandemic, I was like, I spent 17 years, teaching college students what is next for me. And I live in Wisconsin right now, which is, and even while I was teaching college. And so Wisconsin, if you don't know, is like world capital of credit unions. So there was a lot of networks here, and my husband, who works in the industry, directed me towards this job ad for Coopera Consulting. And so I went for it, decided to leave teaching, and yeah, have loved being in the credit union space since. So it's been 2 years.
Thank you all. And I saw a lot of head nodding, so it seems like there's some commonalities in what you guys have experienced even so far. But now I'm going to turn to sort of like the origin of HAPICUP. So what drew you to join or create HAPICUP? What's your personal why for creating this group for yourself and others? And I don't know if we want to start again with Hazel May or.
Yeah, happy to start. It is, I mentioned in kind of, if you're connected with me on LinkedIn, I mentioned that it's been more than a 2-year-long process because essentially I knew that something was spurring in myself as I was navigating through my career at credit unions. I mentioned 13 years, worked my way up and over in different roles in different areas, and just felt exactly what Ivory said, that there wasn't a lot of representation from people that look like me or that I've grown up with or I'm accustomed to. And that was alarming to me because there's just so much that, as we look at the disaggregated data, that shows that there's nuances to each of these different cultures, each of these different groups. And in 2019, I got a really wonderful opportunity to go to a nationally recognized credit union training, and where it was so forward of them back in 2019 to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and some of the, if you look at a city and look at trying to identify the opportunities there and potential solutions, to look at racial demographics. And in that particular training, they of course indicated Black, Hispanic, white, and didn't even include Asian as a minority. And this was a metropolitan city that they were looking at. I want to say it was Detroit, which I have family in Detroit. There's Asians there. So when I saw this, I actually felt that I am alone in this room again. I'm alone in this industry, and just felt that anxiety almost of like not having anyone that could understand some of those things that I deal with and have dealt with my families and whatnot. And the thing that I think pushed me over the edge was, this was the first time ever it wasn't the first time I felt this way, but it was the first time I said something. And so I actually reached out to the facilitator that day and asked them about, so looking at this data, is there a reason why Asian Americans or that whole group isn't included here? And I think it became an eye-opening experience for this individual, and we've had conversations since then. And as you all know, like it all kind of like magnified and like exponentially grew with all of after the murder of George Floyd, knowing that this has been a problem for many, many years. We just haven't said anything. And so that's kind of where I knew something more had to happen. And thankfully reached out to my network of folks as I was getting more and more out in like the credit union space. I got to crash the GAC, and again, felt that met other folks like Mark through that engagement and realized, yeah, I'm not alone through this. And one of the things that has really come out of this is like, and I think Monica will let us talk about this. The DE&I kind of, I don't want to say trend, but movement that's been happening has created a lot of space and opportunity, and it's been wonderful to see and be a part of. And I want to do this because it's been on my heart and mind. I've been really busy kind of with personal things right now, but the co-founders of the BECU ERG, where I was involved with, but not leading since I was doing other work, we just experienced a loss of one of those co-founders. And like, I don't want to bring down this room, but I think it's important to know, like, there's people doing this work and life is short. And I want to respect and honor her for her work that she did and continue to do, and we'll hold her legacy forward. And so that's just important for us all to like think about. This is the time and place for us to move and do more, because people are hurting, and it's the time now. Right before I switch, sorry, I'm getting all over the place right now. I have a lot in my mind. Before I pass it off to one of my colleagues to share their personal why, because you can hear mine's pretty emotional. I also wanted to add some data, because I've been kind of researching similar to what Jen mentioned around this disaggregation of data. And one of the things also that's coming up, as you all know, is the transition from the majority minority in the US coming. And in the last research that I saw from based off 2020 census data is showing that Asian Americans are the #1 growing race demographic in the US. Second is Hispanics and Latinos. And then third and fourth are Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. And so as we talk about the business case, I hate using that language, but as we talk about the need for this space and telling our stories and looking at our membership that represent these things, it's going to be people that are in your communities now. So that's why this is my why. And thank you for giving that time. But I'll let one of my colleagues speak. Megan, I see you unmuted. Thank you for saving me.
Sure. So yeah, and I love what Hazel shared about, wanting to make sure that we aligned as credit union professionals, as leaders in our organization, even as thought leaders in our organization for the AAPI movement. That was really important for me. And another aspect that was important for me was understanding our membership of the AAPI community in order to know how to best support them. One really impactful part or webinar that I participated in early in the pandemic was given by, and I can't remember her name, but her Grace, Stir Fry Guru, if anyone's on Instagram. And she, right before the pandemic started, was about to embark on documenting Chinatowns and the restaurants specifically in Chinatowns. But because of the pandemic, everything closed, including these restaurants. And some of these Asian-owned restaurants were the ones that suffered the most through the pandemic for a large range of reasons. All of the rumors and misinformation that was in the news about, Chinese ties to the pandemic, the violence against Asians. A lot of stories about how the workers that were able to go and were scared because they thought they were going to be, attacked. And then also one really impactful, and I wish I had the statistic, but during the pandemic, a lot of data, and I know that a lot of us are data-driven credit union professionals, a lot of data showed that a lot of these Asian-owned businesses, restaurants specifically, closed during the pandemic because they didn't have the resources, right? While organizations like PF Chang received millions in PPP loans. So why does that matter as credit unions? Because we had an opportunity to help extend our services, our support to these smaller Asian-owned businesses through the PPP loans. So there are specific opportunities where we can help these communities and these members, but we really just need to listen and identify them. So for credit unions that don't necessarily have the resources within their own organizations to be able to understand, my vision for HAPICUP, at least for one aspect of it, is to be that resource. So if someone needs to understand how they can better support their Asian communities and their Asian members, I hope that we achieve a status to be that resource so that they can come to us and better understand.
I'll jump in here. So Thanks, Megan, for that. And that's just to kind of like level set how this all kind of like started for us. Megan, Ivory, and I crashed the CUNA GAC virtually in 2021. And that's where this group kind of, what I believe I could be wrong, that was kind of our formation. But in that, just kind of looking around and taking a self-check of the room, there wasn't a lot of us there. And then just for me personally, being adopted and then growing up in the Midwest, I never really ever had ties to my Filipino heritage. And that was one of the things I absolutely loved about this group, because they were sharing their insights and being a little bit vulnerable. Like, these are the things that they're going through. And then I found out I wasn't alone. So that's where I absolutely love this, of the support network of knowing now that what I went through growing up wasn't the same. And then also to Hazel Mays and everybody else's points, there is a business case for this. We, as credit unions, are to be helping our communities. We sometimes do get we become forgotten. So I think that's one of the things. And for personally, for me, I get to do a lot of work at different conferences and organizations. There are people like us in executive places. There's not a lot, but that's where we are here to kind of hopefully get up there at some point and learn from those experiences, and then also share our stories, because some of the things that we have been going through and what I hear from this group could be financial tools for other people. And it doesn't necessarily need to be AAPI or Hawaiian. Like, this could be for whatever other groups that possibly need it. So that's kind of the reason why this group attracted me. And also knowing that they are my support system if I ever need anything too. So.
I love that. I was just gonna say, on top of what Megan said as well, about, during the pandemic, over the pandemic, I worked really closely like on all the PPP loans. And one of the things that I saw was that, a lot of the big banks, they were taking all of the larger businesses and they were getting a lot of help, but who weren't getting the help were like the smaller, a lot of them AAPI, a lot of them like elder generation, or even like, it spanned throughout all of them, but that didn't have the connections and resources to like get through the entire process and then like to get forgiveness. So I think one of our like strongest points, and if we can be like those people in the community, that like we know the community, we can go in there. Like, I literally like drove to, we call everybody auntie, uncle here. I like drove to our auntie's house to like help her like fill it out and like how to be respectful and just like kind of go through those motions with her, I think is one of our biggest strengths. But really like having a seat at the table and ensuring that all of our voices are heard, I think that's like one of the main things. And like I know you guys said like you might not have a lot of the AAPI in your credit unions. I know that we do here, and like as long as we listen to our employees and we're listening to them, I think that's like the biggest thing. And so that's what I hope that we can be champions of, either like within our organization, within our community, for our members as well. But like both of those things. So thanks for bringing.
Sorry, to add a little bit onto Ivory as well, that story I heard several times. So again, for us crashers from 2021, we heard a lot of this PPP conversation, especially in our smaller groups. And so it was just really one thing that I was so proud of, not as a credit union professional, was one of the like flags that everybody would raise in celebration was who had the smallest PPP loan. And I know that sounds like a really silly thing, but smallest means that even though it took the same amount of paperwork, they still were dedicated to getting as much money as they possibly could for these small businesses, which means more to these small businesses than the bigger corporations that may be able to survive something like this. So not just for, Asian owned businesses, but for all organizations, that small or big, we as credit union professionals should really feel proud of ourselves for always advocating for the smaller businesses and the local businesses.
And just to round it out, you know, my why is rooted from, I think, you know, mostly my upbringing, you know, having an undocumented grandmother, and looking at the struggles of my parents who, you know, gave at least 30% of their monthly income to family members back in the Philippines, right? Just sitting in remittance offices on Saturday mornings, right? Rather than being able to like watch cartoons was my day to day, it was my reality. And I think, you know, I think that gets lost on folks who don't have that, you know, intimate knowledge of what it's like to be an immigrant or a refugee in the United States. And, you know, I felt like it was important to be in an industry that had a strong and clear mission, that, you know, could advocate for the rights of, you know, immigrants, and yeah, having the opportunity to share what some of those struggles are, but also what the opportunities, right? It's not just about being able to, you know, serve minority groups, BIPOC populations because we're charity cases, but really about how we are the future of this country, the population. We bring a huge amount of revenue to, you know, this country. And so it's really important to keep sight of that and to remind folks. And so, yeah, the credit union industry was a really logical choice for me to go into. And then HAPICUP, my kids always joke that I'm always looking for like Filipinos everywhere, or like Asians everywhere. I think it's because, you know, coming from California and being placed in a small town in the Midwest, I'm always looking for like, where are the folks? And so in this profession, I'm like, okay, so where are the Asians? And so I was really delighted to find that Hazel May and, you know, this group of folks were meeting on the regular, and I was like, sign me up.
Thank you for all of those, sharing all of those reasons why the group, why. Now let's get into some of the logistics. And I know that, you know, everything that you guys are saying also is like spurring like follow-up questions for me. Like I want to ask more about that. I want to ask more about that. And I hope the same is happening for the groups or the people who are listening. But just in terms of like logistics of the group, like what are you guys about? Tell us about like kind of how often do you meet, or just when did you said 2 years ago, Hazel, you started? And so what does that really look like? What does it look like to be a part of your group if somebody wants to join? Because I'm assuming it's an open invitation to anybody who supports. And it's
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Yeah, I'll start us off, and then I'm going to put Megan on the spot because Megan has done considerable work in organizing us, and her marketing expertise, right, has really solidified kind of our brand and our purpose and our mission and all of those core values that we've collectively have actually created. And so, as Monica mentioned, we started meeting regularly. And when I say regularly, about once a month since 2021, just to connect and be support groups for each other, to share and celebrate stories, and also to, I'll be honest, to vent and to talk through some of the challenges that we are facing. And I don't know if I would have survived the pandemic without all of these key groups I've been a part of, especially this one. So a quick shout out to everyone. If you're on the call, if you've been a part of those meetings, that was a great need. But to join, we are still formally like formalizing. So we're going to get everything like legal and all of those things great. But this grassroots effort, I think, is even more powerful because it just shows how people wanted that and needed that through this time, and it will continue. But we meet on a monthly basis, and in some cases we have thematic meetings, or it's just, again, a time to connect and share and to network with each other and talk about things that are happening in the world. I recall when the Olympics were happening, I forget, 2022 maybe, and there was the gymnastics was kind of a big deal with the Hmong community, and with, is it Suni, and how she was just, you know, a picture perfect view of that like immigration story, like in representing herself, but also representing America, right? So I remember reading about that and talking a lot about that and other topics that come up in mainstream media. So we do meet monthly. The way to get connected is we have right now, almost like a semi-private LinkedIn group. And the reason why we kept it as such, to have a little bit more control, to ensure that as we are forming, we're including the people and folks that truly represent the groups that we're identifying here. And that was really important to us because we wanted to ensure that we are making this group for us, by us. And through that effort and these grassroots and these meetings that have been happening, we've been slowly but surely, especially with Megan's leadership, bringing forward those really key things that really will solidify us and move us forward. So yeah, if you want to get connected, I'll send a quick, I'll post a link in chat, and I'm sure Monica will send that afterwards to belong to that group. And as we grow and formally promote things, more things will come, like official website and things of that nature. But we're excited about the grassroots, and we're excited for you all to join us if that's something you're interested in. Megan, you want to talk a little bit about your wonderful documents and work that you've done?
Sure. So again, this is very by us, right? So part of the exercise and part of the reason why we felt like it was important to start to formalize what our vision is and what our values are is because as we started to spread the word about HAPICUP, the question kept coming like, well, who is part of it? Who can be part of it? What do you guys do? What do you talk about? So we wanted to make sure that we were confident in our purpose and who we were, so that when we were able to talk about it, we had a clear vision, we had a clear purpose. And so as part of our monthly meetings, we would take a little bit of time to brainstorm what's important to us, what's important about gathering, what information will we share, and how will we support our communities, both as professionals and our members. And so we formulated our working purpose document, and I'm sure when we do put up our website and it'll be part of our LinkedIn, you can take a look at those there. Also, again, shout out to Lake Trust because we actually just did this internally. So this was a very familiar practice to me, and which is why I felt compelled to help navigate the organization through this process as well. And so also we felt like it was important to be represented. So we were aiming to try to get some way to identify each other. So obviously, hence a logo. And I did help with the logo. And I wanted to share some intent behind why it was designed the way it was. I had recently just gotten back from a trip to Los Angeles, and a great friend of mine, his family owns one of the largest African-American art collections that is currently on display at SoFi. But what was really unique about this art experience, it wasn't just art, it was art aligned with history. So as he walked us through the gallery, he told us the history of the art in context of what was happening for that community. And through that exhibit, there was a quote, and so I'll read it to you, but I also just dropped it in chat. You are where you are today because you stand on somebody's shoulders. And whenever you are heading, you cannot get there by yourself. If you stand on the shoulders of others, you have a reciprocal responsibility to live your life so that others may stand on your shoulders. It's quid pro quo of life. We exist temporarily, through what we take, but we live forever through what we give. So as you'll see on the HAPICUP logo, it is a stacked theme. So it's trying to embody that we're here because of those that have come before us, but we're also trying to allow those that comes after us to stand on our shoulders.
Okay,
And
well, thank you for designing that. And
yeah, real quick, Monica, before I just also like this, whenever I see Megan's logo and inspiration around it, I just get chicken skin, like goosebumps. It's just who we are and what we are and what we do. But one of the things I also have to like, I don't keep forgetting, but it's always as a part of this work, the influence of other organizations that have existed similar to what we're trying to create here with NALCUP, AACU, CU Pride. I will have to say their influence and their leadership in kind of paving the way for us was so instrumental in creating thinking about what we could create and what we could do. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. Anyone on the call, if you're there or if you're watching the recording, thank you for your inspiration, Ms. Renee Sattywhite. She actually gave me a space in the AACUC there was no other space for me. And so just thank you for that opportunity. And I just look forward to the continued partnership through all of those different groups because, together we stand strong together.
I actually remember, Hazel, May last year, this time, May of last year, when you were we had a webinar celebrating AANHPI Heritage Month, but it was like in the chat, you were like, we have this group, it's on LinkedIn. And it was like kind of like a whole year ago. It was sort of where our focus last year was, it was a webinar with the credit unions who are actually serving Asian Americans as their membership base. And so we had like Lanai and Mabuhay and Northeast. There have been a lot of links shared. We'll make sure you guys get those. The recording will also have the chat bar as well, so you guys can see the links and click on the links after. But I just have a couple of questions to kick it off. But again, if people have their own questions that you want to have asked on the call, we're happy to ask them. One thing that caught my attention was when you mentioned ERGs, Hazelme, but anybody at your credit union, this idea of having an employee resource group, because again, it might be something people are thinking like, well, we don't have that at our credit union. And so were any of you part of either forming an ERG, employee resource group at your credit, or just were part of one? And were there any challenges or roadblocks, or just what does involvement mean at a credit union level? What is that? What could that look like? If anybody wants to take that.
We don't have one. I do have experience creating a ERG within my organization, and it does really kind of start with similar to this. It needs to have some grassroots of the group. There needs to be some champions. The other thing I would suggest is make sure that you do get buy-in from leadership too. In certain areas, you don't need everybody to be on board. You're not going to make everybody happy. You are going to get challenged along the way. Do not let those challenges disrupt what you're trying to do, regardless if it is an AAPI group or just trying to get visualization in front of an underrepresented group. So I don't know if that helped or not, Monica, if that's what you were looking for, but from somebody that has started a few groups that has worked out and some that has not, those are some key takeaways that I've learned over the years of trying to put things together.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as somebody who advises a lot of credit unions on DEI initiatives, which includes ERGs, I think a big mistake that ERGs tend to make is there's that excitement around it, but then there's also that ambition to do all the things, right? And do it in a short amount of time. I think it's important to just come together first and to have the regular habit of meeting, right? Even if you may not have a particular agenda, but just to get into the habit of being a coalition that meets regularly, use it as a time to just share what your experiences are like at your organization and just go from there. And, that can organically, help you think about what are those low-hanging fruit kinds of projects that you can work on, identifying some gaps that the credit union may have that you can share insights on, everything from, what are some loan products that you could revise so that they're more culturally resonant for our community, right? What are the things that you're seeing in terms of language there you need more translation, or, what are our assumptions that are in our processes that AAPIs can call attention to and say, hey, did you notice that it actually, is not inclusive of some of our needs, right? So I think it's important to, meet regularly. Don't expect to do all the things, but just to get started and having a regular habit of, meeting as a group.
And I have to probe on that one, because Jen is great advice about not being too ambitious and just gathering. But also when you mentioned products for AAPI, what comes to mind? What kind of products that AAPI?
Yeah, everything from loans to be able to help accommodate for family members who are multi-generational, or households that are multi-generational, right? So when we think about mortgages, we may not necessarily be mom and dad and 2.5 kids, right? We are grandmas and grandpas and uncles and aunts and cousins that live under the same roof, right? Do your processes, does the loan process allow for multiple adults to be on the paperwork? things like savings accounts for, you know, AAPI folks who identify as Muslim, or anybody who, you know, identifies as Muslim. You know, can you put a savings account opening for Muslims who are saving up to go to their pilgrimage to Mecca, which is something that, you know, every good Muslim should do if they can, you know, within their lifetime. That's a very common product that you'll find in Southeast Asia, where there's a Muslim population. You either have a loan product or a savings account specifically for religious purposes. And, you know, they're basically, you know, personal loans or just regular savings account, but being able to frame them in such a way so that they resonate culturally and people can realize, oh, I could save money aside for, you know, my pilgrimage. Oh, I never thought about it that way, right? So I think it's important to think about the ways in which we operate in the world, the ways in which we approach our cultures, that could be opportunities for credit unions to help support.
I love that. And when I was thinking about products too, I was thinking about like citizenship loans. I know in some communities they have that if you want to work and save towards that, or immigration type of loans.
Yeah.
Another follow-up question I had was about the bamboo ceiling, that phrase that was mentioned. It kind of it invokes like the glass ceiling for women. And so this bamboo ceiling for people who are of AAPI descent, like it made me think about, particularly Ivory, when you were talking about you being a minority community, and yet what you're still seeing is not enough for kind of like for the population that's in your community, it should be reflected as such in the leadership too. And so what can you kind of expound on that, or anybody who can share like anytime they've personally felt like they were blocked or kind of held back because of their identity?
I'll just mention, and I'm not sure if this is like, again, I'm always like, is this only my experience, or is this like the majority of the colored minority or majority now? But I know growing up here, it's really part of our culture to like put our head down. You don't talk up, you don't speak up, you are very respectful to elders, but especially anybody in authority positions. So I think it goes against our nature to like really put ourselves out there and be like, I'm going to go for that. I'm going to speak up, and I have an idea for something new, and I have an idea. I want to sit at the table. Like, I just think it goes against my nature. And so being like, knowing that I have people that have my back, that like, if I do speak up or if I do come to the table, that they're like, we're behind you, or we're like right alongside you and we're lifting you up and like pushing that ceiling down. Like, that's just, I think that's the difference between the AAPI and then, you know, and the rest of us. I don't know, Megan.
Yeah, I just wanted to share my experience and kind of two experiences that have come together for me to have an emotion towards this. So when I was living in California, I was speaking with a Filipino coworker, and long story short, there was an opportunity for her to ask for a raise, and then she told me her raise, right? And it was very small in what I considered a small raise, but she had the opportunity to really ask for a lot. And I was like, no, you should ask for more. And she's like, no, I'm okay. Kind of Ivory to what you're saying. No, I think it's fine. And I was like, why? And she's like, well, because I'm Filipino. And I was like, what? And first generation, I don't know what in our upbringing had us have two different perspectives, but I was like, but I'm Filipino too. And I don't expect that from me. And she's like, yeah, but Megan, you were born here. So when we talk about our journey that Jen shared with us at the beginning, your journey matters, not just that you're Filipino American, but how you were brought up, what characteristics you were taught. As Ivory said, keep your head down. I know a lot of other AAPIs that had that same mentality. And so recently I was speaking with a mentor who is also, she's an executive in the financial industry space. She's Asian. And, I told her that one of my goals is to become, an AAPI leader. And she's like, well, why is it important? She kind of challenged that. Why is it important for you to be the first Asian? And that kind of took me back a little bit. And I'm like, and I had to think about it. But then, connecting these two stories, because somebody's going to look at me and say, if she can do it, I can do it. If that Filipino American, if that Asian American do it, I can do it. So I think that is a lot of my why beyond, for the AAPI community, is to like Hazel May said in the beginning, represent our community so that others can see it and think I can do that too. Because a lot have come before me and I've thought the same. But so, and also, not only are some of us single minority, we are double, triple. You know, if you're in your 30s, if you're a woman, if you're Asian, there are so many more minority groups that you are starting to collect like badges. And this has always been posed to me too. I wear those badges with honor. Every time I come into a room where I am very different, I am very proud of myself for being there. And Mark said it in one of our purpose meetings. We're not asking for a seat at the table, we are demanding a seat at the table.
And I just wanted to add on to Megan. I don't know this is for everybody else, but from a young age, I was always kind of taught you're going to have to work harder than everybody else in the room. You're going to have to just dig down and pull yourself up from the bootstraps. One thing they always kind of forgot to mention for myself, you need to advocate for yourself as well too. You're not going to be just given this. So that was just 100% agree with Megan. And those are just what I've kind of like learned from this group too in the last couple of years. I've went from a different organization. I got some promotions. And if it wasn't for, hey, you need to your point, Megan, you need to ask for more and not think of like, I'm going to volunteer my time or I'm going to forfeit some sort of income because think this is what I'm worth. We're worth a lot. We need to start demanding it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Go for it, Jen.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm thinking about all of our journeys and the ways in which we have, demanded seats at the table in our own ways. And, it's something that I'd like to hear more from folks. For myself, I left a 17-year career in academia. I had, reached tenure all the way up to full professor and still hit that bamboo ceiling. It was really frustrating. And that was what, was kind of the last straw. It was like, okay, I guess I've got to, change industries if they can't have me move any higher than where I was. And so, I'm glad of that because I realized, okay, you don't have to take this, right? You can move on and you can find spaces in which you can also carve out, some, status for yourself and some responsibilities. I went in as a DEI director and realized, wait a minute, I'm doing more than just DEI trainings for HR, which oftentimes is how DEI is thought about. And I thought, you know what, actually, this is a lot of strategy. It's about organizational change management. And so, approaching my CEO to talk about, what exactly it is I do helps us, compile like, a better list of like, what are the things that I do? And what does that actually mean in terms of a title, in terms of where I am in my career path? And so I really encourage folks to be proactive about that, right? Rather than just passively assuming that that is the trajectory you're supposed to go on. Demand more of the ability to drive your own trajectory is what I mean. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you. Well, we are at time. This hour passed super quickly, but I just want to thank you all for sharing your personal journey, your personal stories, the reasons why you created HAPICUP. What is next in terms of next steps? I know I'll send the recording and slides and links, all these great resources to folks, but when is your next meeting or when are you guys getting together again?
Yes, thanks, Monica. So for those that are interested in joining us, please, I put the link in the chat for the actual group itself. It does need administrator approval because, again, we're kind of still forming and wanting to make sure we're representing ourselves in the best manner and collectively joining. But we will continue to have monthly meetings. We actually have a monthly meeting coming up next week on May 18th. We are talking a little bit, continuing this conversation around breaking the bamboo ceiling and having us all have an opportunity to collectively share kind of what have been some of the barriers and how have we told our stories, advocated for ourselves and done that. And once you're in the group itself, or if you want to email me, if you don't have LinkedIn, please do that. We can get you added, but we meet on a monthly cadence and you'll get those on your calendar. Join when you can, join to celebrate, join to tell a story, join the event, but we're here to support each other. And so more to come, especially as we formalize, as I mentioned that earlier, with more events and other things where we'll ask more partnerships and other things to join us.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to my colleague too, Kathy Kim, and thank you all for presenting today. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Mahalo.